I would highly recommend someone who's injured in a hit and run claim in Alberta to contact a lawyer.
If you or someone you know is injured in a hit and run crash, what are your options? What are your rights? We're going to find out right now on this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest is Alberta lawyer Steve Grover. I want to remind you right off the top, if you'd like to ask Steve questions about your situation, it's easy. Go to askthelawyer.com. Click the button at the top that says Ask a Lawyer. I'll walk you right through the process there. Or you can call the phone number you see on the screen during our conversation. Steve, it's always good to see you. Thank you for helping us out.
Hi, Rob. Nice to see you again. Hope everything's going well with you.
Going great so far. So let's talk a little bit about your experience in this area. Have you represented clients who have been in hit and run accidents and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes people don't want to be accountable for their actions, and there are cases that we've taken on where people are driving down the road, they're stopped at the red light, and all of a sudden, boom, they get hit from behind by another vehicle. Unfortunately, that driver doesn't stay and they flee the scene of the accident. So they're not that common in Alberta, but they are an issue that we have to deal with on the odd case that comes in our office. So we've dealt with hit and run cases several times during my 20 years of practicing law here in Alberta.
So it would seem, first of all, people are going to call the police and get the police involved. In your experience, do the police try to track down hit and run drivers, or is that something they just say there's not much hope of that?
Well, I mean, the police resources are limited. I mean, they're doing their day-to-day jobs. They're handing out tickets. They're investigating crimes. They are busy, and that's unfortunately, the cops do come to the scene of the accident. It's a hit and run accident. Hopefully, the driver that we represent, or even the passenger, got the make and model of the vehicle. Hopefully, the license plate, so the police can track down, that vehicle. I mean, the police do the best they can in Calgary and Alberta, but unfortunately, sometimes when you don't have a license plate, it's really hard to track down a vehicle. And police resources are limited now, especially during the pandemic. But they try and do the best they can.
So what can an attorney like yourself, a civil attorney, do in what most people probably figure is a criminal case? What can you do to help people who've been in these accidents?
Well, if you are involved in a hit and run accident and if you are injured, you can contact our office. Like I said earlier, in this interview, we've dealt with several of these kind of cases. There is something called the Motor Vehicle Administration Fund here in Alberta. It's a general revenue fund where if you're involved in a hit and run claim, you can make a claim against the Motor Vehicle Administration Fund here in Alberta. We call it the Administration Fund, or MVA fund. The most amount of money you can claim in Alberta is $200,000 plus costs and disbursements. There is a 90-day waiting period that you have to notify the fund about an accident. It's statutory law. So from the day of the accident, you've got 90 days to notify the fund, or your claim could get barred. So I think that's very important for a person that's injured in a hit and run claim in Alberta, because there are statutory limitations on these claims. You have 2 years to file your statement of claim in Alberta, but you do have 90 days to notify the fund of a potential hit and run claim so that you can access the General Revenue Fund in Alberta and make a claim through the Motor Vehicle Administration Fund.
Is navigating that fund, is that something somebody can do on their own, Steve, or what's the advantage of having an attorney like yourself help them through that process?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't recommend dealing with the fund. Unfortunately, you are dealing with the government, and it is the government purse that you're trying to get funds from. And obviously, the government's interest is to protect the public interest, the taxpayers' dollar. You can notify the fund. You can try and deal with them, but most cases, we have to file a statement of claim. You have 2 years in Alberta to file a statement of claim, and then we will deal with the fund's lawyers. It's not as easy as most people think. There's ways to stick handle and deal with the fund and to get a reasonable settlement. I would highly recommend someone who's injured in a hit and run claim in Alberta to contact a lawyer, like a law firm like Grover Law Firm, where we've dealt with these claims. We know how to deal with the fund. We know how to deal with their lawyers. Obviously, they have an issue of, making sure that there is a valid claim, that this is a legitimate hit and run claim, making sure that the party that's injured is, injured, they've gone for treatment. And so we've dealt with these claims, and I would highly recommend someone in Alberta, retaining a lawyer to deal with them directly.
What about getting insurance involved, Steve? Is that an option? Is there a version of like underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, or is that the fund you're talking about?
No, the fund is direct. Like it's almost like you're making a claim against the fund, who's the third party driver potentially. Um, and if the fund pays out on that claim, they usually will agree on settlement for a consent judgment. Where if they find the person that caused the hit and run claim in Alberta, they can enforce that judgment against that party that didn't come forward and cause the accident. Like I said earlier, that you're limited in Alberta to $200,000 plus costs and disbursements. If unfortunately, if you have a traumatic injury, a serious brain injury, fractures that you can't go back to work, we have something in Alberta. It's a version of underinsurance coverage. It's called SEF 44 coverage, family endorsement coverage, and there is a limit of 200 grand. Myself, I carry about $2 million on my car insurance. And if my injuries and claim is worth more than 200 grand, we can sue my own insurance company for coverage over and above the $200,000 up to a limit of $2 million in giving an example of my policy. So obviously there's access to getting more funds. You have to get your own insurance company involved. You have to notify them again. You most likely have to file a statement of claim. They'll want to go through, questioning. We call it here in Alberta questioning, where elsewhere it's called discovery. So there is access to more funds, but you have to deal with your own insurance company on that kind of claim through your SEF 44 coverage.
So what about insurance, Steve? Is there a version of like uninsured motorist coverage, or is that part of the fund? Explain how that works.
Yeah, in Alberta, we have uninsurance coverage. Like I mentioned earlier in the interview, that when you sue the fund in Alberta, there's only a limit of $200,000 plus costs and disbursements. So if you're catastrophically injured, you can sue the fund, but then you have to notify your insurance company, and you can make a claim through your lawyer of SCF 44. So, give an example. Most people carry about $1 million in Alberta. The fund will pay out 200,000. If your claim is worth 500,000, you can make a claim through your own insurance company for the overage. So they pay you the $300,000 more than what the fund will pay you. Again, you have to notify your insurance company about if you're going to make an SCF 44 claim. You have to file a statement of claim against your insurance company. It won't increase your rates, but that's coverage that you're paying for. So I recommend our clients, when there is a limit on dealing with the fund of 200,000 plus costs and disbursements, that you have that access to more funds through your own insurance company through your SCF 44 coverage on your auto insurance policy here in Alberta.
Now, is this usually a situation, Steve, where the insurance company will go, hey, you got this coverage, here you go, here's that extra money that you're due? Or may it take somebody like yourself to convince the insurance company that they need to pay what's due?
Unfortunately, insurance companies are in the business of making money. Unfortunately, they're not the more reciprocal to, you're going to pay out your policy. We expect you to pay for your auto insurance coverage every month. If you don't pay, we're going to cut you off. You don't have any auto insurance. But unfortunately, insurance companies are in the business of making money. And they are going to fight you on the value of the case. They're going to say, listen, you're going to have to file a statement of claim. You're going to have to serve our corporate offices. We'll get our counsel involved to defend our claims and see what the claim is really all about.
And that's why people need somebody like yourself to help them through this whole process, not try to do it themselves.
Correct.
Lots of really helpful information every time we talk, Steve. Thank you so much for answering our questions.
Thank you for having me again. Have a great day.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Alberta, Calgary lawyer Steve Grover. Remember, if you want to ask Steve questions of your own, go to askthelawyer.com. Click the button at the top that says Ask a Lawyer. It'll walk you right through the very simple process. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyers.